Donald Thompson, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you, Chris?
I am doing great as well, and we're really happy to have you here and talk to you about what is a pretty extraordinary concept. And You're the founder of the Center for Regenerative Design and Collaboration, and it almost sounds like it'd be a fancy foundation or nonprofit, but this is actually a really incredibly dynamic company that you started, and the way you started it is pretty cool as well. And what you do is pretty cool, which is finding a way to get rid of plastic and put it to really good use. And it's so coincident with what we talk about here at Social Capital, because we talk about ways that business can help improve the world for people and take care of people. And there's a lot of other ideas and thoughts and agendas out there that are all important, but at the end of the day, it's about helping people and using a business model to help people. And it sounds like you're doing that in a really creative way. So first of all, just thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we're enjoying it. We're inspired. We feel like we can make a difference, and it keeps us going every day. So thanks for the recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, you started this in a very interesting way, and how you came to do this. Why don't you tell our viewers and our readers a little bit about what inspired you, to do this? Because you started from kind of you were volunteering, as I understand it, and what made you think that this could be a company and that this could really make a difference?
To give a little history of CRDC, I have to kind of go way back. So I'm a Canadian, but I'm a full-time resident of Costa Rica, and I've been here for 32 years. So I moved here when I was much younger, and I've always been in the building product design business. And so I built a designed and patented a product in Canada years and years ago, and sold it, and moved to Costa Rica because kind of could. It was an adventure for my wife and my kids, and my boys were just little at that time, 4 and 7, and we came here, and we just thought it would be good for the kids to learn a different culture. We actually came originally for 6 months and see what it was all about. I we stayed. I'll make a long story short. We stayed. I created a construction entity and a development entity. And what I really found I loved was social housing. I actually worked on the the two ends of the scale, the highest end and the lowest end. We were recognized for the government that for that, and we were given a decree called Patron de Paz. We could create this symbiotic relationship between poor people and wealthier people that would come to Costa Rica and would want to make an investment, buy a vacation home. We could provide them that. But if a bit of that money went into housing bonds, then we could actually build people social housing.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so I made a career out of social housing, and high-end development. So that's really sort of the background, and there's always been this deep interest in what could we do to help out the society and people within it, and specifically children. So the story kind of goes of the creation of CRDC. It is a pretty heady name, I agree, and it always gets everybody's attention. But those two words today, seems to me regeneration is really creeping up on circularity. A lot of people are
Hmm.
talking about, they make the comparison between regeneration and circularity, and collaboration is all about social capital. So, but that came from the development of trying to help a small bedroom community that in a resort area, poor children, poor families, and the idea came to create a music school on the beach. So it was my wife's idea. So we created a classical music school on the beach, and I thought she was crazy. She wasn't. Just boomed. And and so musicians came from all over the world. The children became great musicians. And I'm not a musician, so they had to help me clean up the beach, because it was just becoming such a worrisome problem to see so much plastic, even in Costa Rica. Just at times, It's certain, during the rainy season, it could just be our beach was 7 kilometers long, 7 kilometer, dump. And so you
Oh,
had that.
wow.
Yeah, so it was hurting my potential business, my business, because we're also selling high-end properties on that same beach. So
Sure.
you get lots of plastic washing up on the beach. It kind of takes away from that quintessential idea of,
Yeah.
of paradise, right? So the kids were great. They helped me clean up the beach, and that was sort of their payback. And that concern and watching the children get involved is really what changed the whole focus of my career. And we're getting all these cool people, these young people come by, and we started to get involved in mangrove reforestation and the music school, the cleaning up the beach, and we just realized that these community efforts could really make a big, big difference. So the concept of regeneration we looked at from two perspectives. One was education is one of the most regenerative things that there is. So if you can teach a child and that child could grow up to be a teacher, then that output of he could affect or she could affect thousands of people below them. If you planted one mangrove, that one mangrove could grow into a mangrove forest. And so that concept, we were fascinated by that concept that you could actually you could plant the seed, whether that be educational or physical.
Yeah.
And the output could be so great. So it was sort of this original first look at circularity. And my job in the low-income housing side, if I learned anything in Latin American low-income housing, is that typically housing gauges our economies. Oftentimes, though, in developing countries, with all of the goodwill in the world, a big agency could come in and give a country money to build their people housing, but it often could be substandard or sub-quality. So if you want to make somebody poor, provide them a house with a depreciating asset. So my whole job was to create, how could you take people out of poverty, provide them a house with an appreciating asset? And that really then comes back to the quality of the materials that go into that house. So we just realized that if we're going to do something with this plastic in the trade that we understood, we should try to put it into long-term physical assets. So our first try, and it was pretty successful, honestly, was walking down the beach with two little guys one day. They jumped up and down on a bunch of bottles, and I looked back and they looked exactly like slate building tiles. The most expensive building tiles you could have in the world. And everybody told me the big problem with plastic was it's going to last forever. So it was kind of like a aha moment.
Yeah.
So I designed and created a plastic bottle that crimped into like an origami into a perfect building tile. And this is back in 2012. And then I realized, I was pretty much an environmentalist against plastic. I wouldn't drink anything out of plastic. I like bubbly stuff that's in a brown bottle anyhow. So that wasn't a brown glass bottle. So that wasn't a big problem anyway. But I was pretty much against plastic. But we quickly learned that we weren't going to be able to make a big impact if we stood on the outside and kind of scolded the people that use plastic or produce plastic. So I thought, can't beat them, join them. So I decided to learn everything I could about the industry. And we called it the bottle to tile. We patented it, and it was pretty successful. It won like a sustainable packaging award. It was featured in some world exhibitions, and this general concept that you could take a product and design it for end of life, but design it to have a long-term value in an industry, the real estate industry, that still appreciates in value. And so, we've learned a long time ago that the most sustainable thing is quality. So if you could build a quality house and you had that plastic in that house, it would appreciate over time. That idea actually caught on. This is sort of pre-circularity conversation time. And then we got in, and while there's a little bit more to the story, we found one of the best water sources that you could ever imagine here in Costa Rica. That's sort of the Fiji water story. We won all kinds of awards with that. And my partners in the water bottle company said, why would we, get into this whole environmental thing if we can just sell gourmet water? And I said, well, great. You guys sell gourmet water and buy me out. And so they did. And I, and I couldn't do anything in the industry for a 3-year period and non-compete. And then in 2018, but during that time, we're really thinking about it. It's kind of cool to take one bottle and turn it into one building tile, but you're really not going to change the world. You get some design kudos, but it's not going to make that change. The aggregate industry, though, can change the world. Construction aggregate is the number 2 most consumed product only below fresh water in the world. So, we have a big problem with plastic. We make over 400 million tons of it a year now. A lot of it goes into the environment. We call that tragic plastic. We thought, you need a pretty big volume product to be able to absorb that. The aggregate industry, though, is if you turned all that 400 million tons into aggregate, it would only equate to 2.1%. So all of a sudden it was kind of like, wow, if we could get that just right, if we could make an aggregate that was actually brought qualities into our construction products, then we could probably get rid of that.
Real quickly, for people that might not understand what aggregate means, go ahead.
The rocks and sand that you would put in asphalt or concrete.
Okay.
So, you think of a lot of people say 3/4 crush or construction sand, so either or. We actually focused on the fine aggregate side. And as a building designer and a developer, I realized that the industry, the construction industry is extremely conservative. And it has to be. You can't build things. There's liabilities involved. You have to build things.
Sure.
So if you could get that just right, but it also has needs. We need in the industry, in the construction industry, we need to lower our carbon, our CO2 impact. 40% of the world's carbon load is relative in one way or the other to construction. So the industry itself is moving to greening itself, but again, nonetheless, it's extremely conventional. So, when we went about making this aggregate, we knew we wanted to use every kind of plastic available. Beach plastic, which can be pretty dirty, can have crustaceans on it, can have some sand in it, it can have whatever, or post-consumer plastic could still have a little bit of yogurt in the thing. Those are realities, right?
Right.
And so how could you commingle all of that and make a product that was actually a high-end product? So what we did was we essentially went from a building science perspective. We didn't really care if it was a PET particle or a PET molecule or a high-density polyethylene or a ABS or whatever the 8 or the 7 resin types were. We didn't really care as long as it could give us the physical structure that we were looking for. So essentially what we do is we take all plastic and we put it through a dry cleaning process. And what that means is essentially we put lime on it. So it kills any pathogens or any odors. Then we melt all of that together. We grind it all up and then we melt it in a machine that's called an extruder with a little bit of moisture, so it creates vapor, and that vapor then makes it bubbly. So if you could think of a big cheese puff, essentially that's the first step. We make these big plastic cheese puffs that the color always turns out a shade of gray. With 50 shades of gray, we could say, right in that neighborhood. So, but it always comes out the same color as lava rock or those tones. So after we've got these big blobs, we then cut them up into the exact shape and gradation that the construction industry is looking for. So when you look at our aggregate, you can't physically tell it from, let's say, lava stone, another lightweight aggregate. Only it's 1/4 of the weight and a much better insulator. So when you're in the construction industry and you have a product that's actually lighter, especially in the concrete side, it's actually lighter and better insulated, and in some cases could even provide some other benefits like the acoustics, and even in some cases some strength and fire improvements, then you can sell that broadly into the marketplace. So that's what we were able to do. We were able to create that synthetic sand out of the entire waste stream, and found a big thirst for it and a big market in the world.
Wow. I mean, Don, your story, the reason why you do what you do, the creativity, the brilliance to come up with that and apply all that, in a real world solution to a real world problem. It's such an incredible blueprint, not just for that, but really, for so many other entrepreneurs and so many other leaders for, how to solve our problems rather than looking and saying, how do we get rid of something? How do we use something that is a reality to improve life in one way, shape, or form or another? I mean, that's it's mind-boggling and absolutely brilliant. And I applaud you for that in so many ways. It's so fascinating to hear this. I love, of course, the fact that all this came from you wanting to help people in the first place with the housing project and everything else. So, I mean, you need to write a book about this whole process, quite honestly, and everything that you've gone through, because this is absolutely incredible. So, tell me a little bit about where you guys are now. You're partnering with other people as well. You've built you have a factory to produce this now as well, right?
So, gosh, I mean, we've been so fortunate, honestly. We kind of knew where we wanted to go. And then it's also a stage of life. I didn't really want to just create like one factory and say, hey, I can turn plastic into aggregate. The idea was to make a real difference. I mean, we're very concerned. The project started with environmental plastic, shoreline plastic. And so that's still a big focus. We call that tragic plastic. That comes from the tragedy of the commons. It's like everybody thinks that it's somebody else's problem. And consequently, I don't really, honestly, after hearing a lot about that, whether it be industry's problem or the consumer's problem, I don't really care or know, but I do know that it's tragic that it's in the ocean. So the position we took was we need to make a big difference. So what we did was we went to industry. We went to the petroleum industry in 2018, and we had some conversations, and in their wisdom, they created this Alliance to End Plastic Waste. And the Alliance to End Plastic Waste now is 80 of the world's biggest corporations got together and said, listen, we have to do something, and they created a foundation. And so that's where our first funding came from. But it is a global effort. It's sometimes, unfortunately, I believe sometimes, unfortunately, criticized a little bit, like they're not doing enough, because these are big companies, but they are definitely doing enough with the right intent, again, in my estimation, to get the job done. So we joined up with them, and it wasn't easy at first, because this whole idea of what we call industrial symbiosis, bringing the construction industry in to help solve a resin industry issue, was kind of a little bit different, right? Mm-hmm. And we actually created our own business model that was recognized in Davos around that we call REAP, Recover, Enrich, Appreciate, Prosper. And it started the business model started to take off within the construction industry. It started to take off. We didn't have any trouble finding plastic whatsoever. I think we did a wise thing. We joined up with Habitat for Humanity in Latin America early on. We also joined up with the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP, early on, and we started to get this really great support. So although the project was born in Costa Rica, we're now in the United States, we're in South Africa, we're putting plants with the UNDP right now in Samoa. We're building a plant soon in Mexico, and the machinery is being unloaded in Australia, literally all over the world. So this year we'll build probably 7 or 8 facilities, I think, with the outlook to build 20 in the next 2 years. and we have about 28 countries that want it right now. So it's becoming kind of a mainstream idea, and it is this new kind of business model of regenerative for good, leave it better than you found it, but also the public-private. We said, okay, listen, we all got to roll up our sleeves, and I guess maybe that's the whole concept of social capital is, right? We all have to collaborate to pull this together, and we've just been so fortunate. And that's why we feel inspired, because we think now that we can really make a big difference. It's challenging. There's no question it's challenging, but we've got the support, and now way outside of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, now family offices and big business and big business, like some big companies are getting involved.
And what are the numbers here? Because I was reading some of these numbers, and they're pretty extraordinary. The amount of plastic waste that you're able to assimilate through these factories and through what you're doing. What are we talking about?
Significant. So if we go back to what I was saying about the construction industry, the aggregate would only account for 2% of the the plastic would only account for 2% of that aggregate. You can make some big headway. So our partner in Costa Rica is the largest concrete products company around, in reality, in this country, pretty much in a monopoly, called Pedregal. Incredibly great people, great conservative old construction company. Took a long time to get their buy-in, but when we got it in, it was big. So to put it in perspective, Costa Rica is 5 million people. Our facility in Costa Rica that we're just finishing bolting together right now is capable of processing about 4.5 tons an hour, 100 tons of plastic a day.
Oh my God.
And 100 tons of plastic a day will completely eliminate the waste plastic problem in the country. So the UNDP got behind us, and we call it Paisajes sin Plástico, or landscapes without plastic. This will be the first country in the world to get its plastic problem its tragic plastic problem completely under check.
That's incredible. I mean, that is nothing short of incredible. I mean, if I said you need to write a book, or I mean, if we made a movie about this, people would say, "Oh, well, that could never happen in real life." That's extraordinary what you're doing, and the way that you're doing it. Now, I can only imagine. Obviously, if you're able to produce that much, your company is doing well and succeeding economically as well, right?
Yeah. So, in order, it's we want to do the right thing, but in order to be recognized, you have to make money. That's just the reality of today's world, right? So, and we all, our employees and our staff, everybody needs to make an income, and it needs to be sustainable. So money is a focus for sure. So it's definitely, there's some pretty good returns, and there can be even better returns in some locations, because in the United States, for instance, and in Australia and in South Africa, we get paid tipping fees. So we actually get paid to take people's plastic, and soon we'll get what are called extended producer responsibility funds, because in some countries like England and Chile, a number of countries, the industry has to pay essentially a tax to help clean up. We have access to those funds on the front end, but our business model isn't reliant on that front end potential income. This is a straight for-profit business. We can take this resource, which used to be seen as waste. We take it, and now we can commingle it and turn it into a profitable aggregate stream. Yeah,
I mean, it's the one man's garbage, it's another man's gold, right? I mean, it's it's absolutely brilliant. So, okay, hey, I could talk to you for an hour or two or a day about this and never run out of things to ask you and say. But I want to thank you for taking this time. We will definitely be talking to you again, and inviting you to interact with us in a lot of ways, because this is such like I said, a perfect blueprint for how social capital companies can do a lot of good. And your brilliance and your perspective and your hard work. Once again, just thank you so much for taking the time, but thank you so much for what you're doing, because it really is world changing.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to tell the story at this level. It's just amazing for us, considering it came from a small little music school to be able to tell you the story, Chris. It's pretty impactful for us as well.
All right. Well, we will definitely be talking to you soon, Don. Okay. So thanks for joining us.
Okay, take care. Bye now.
Bye bye.